How's everybody doing today? Welcome to Marketing Mondays number 83. And we welcome back Patric, thankfully, here to save me from drowning.
Hey, no, not at all, man. I'm thrilled that you guys were able to go on last week and have a show. And without me being at the SEMA show, it worked out perfect. So
yeah, no, we got to go. I went through a few things, going through content creation that I kind of do on a weekly basis. So I thought it was a nice peek behind the screen to show some people. But I think, at least for me, I'm curious, and we can jump into this, of what your takeaways from SEMA were. And one of the things I wanted to highlight on too was what type of marketing things did you see that kind of caught your eye while you're there? Because obviously, if you haven't been to SEMA, I haven't yet, and I would love to go. This thing, it's massive. There's like 5 conference halls worth of stuff, and it's kind of everything automotive. So my curiosity is to know, like, what were your takeaways from it, and then what things kind of stood out from you marketing wise.
Well, I think initial takeaways were this. I feel like this was the first SEMA post-pandemic that was back to what SEMA was like before the pandemic. The first year that they were back after the pandemic, it was pretty light, and it felt really like there was a lot of people not there. Last year, it felt a little bit more normal, but it still felt like a lot of the international contingency wasn't there. This year felt back full on like SEMA. It's a little bit different because now, since the pandemic, there's an additional hall, which is called the West Hall, which prior to that was just, there was the North, South, and Central Hall. So now you've got a whole additional huge hall. So the people that are coming to SEMA are spread out over an additional hall. So sometimes it feels like there's not as many people, but when you think about the fact that there's maybe the same number of people, they're just spread out over a larger geography, it makes sense. Most of the people that I spoke to at the show said that they felt like day one was a little bit slow. Made sense because it was Halloween. A lot of people stayed home to be with their families. Day 2 and 3 were rocking. Most people had a really good day 2 or 3. And then day 4 always tends to drop off. But overall, I think it was a really good show. I think that, again, it was good to see the vibe kind of fully back on, kind of like a pre-pandemic vibe to a SEMA show.
No, that's awesome to hear. Were there anything marketing wise as far as whether it's a specific, don't have to name any distributors, but what kind of, things kind of jumped out that one you felt like this is going to bring in new people, maybe obviously not for marketing for us, but if it was something as far as a product that kind of jumped out, or something that one of the companies was doing promotionally? I know, having gone to the window film conference, I know like those towels with all the different characters and stuff on them was definitely something I thought was a really good marketing drive, because that seemed to be one of those things that they wanted to get. And obviously one of the things that you started up was the t-shirt draw as far as like the window film pro. So there's definitely like some must-haves that people kind of want. And obviously if anybody's going to grab an item and then if I'm wearing the window film pro shirt, that's free advertising. Was there stuff like that you kind of noticed and was like, oh, that's a really good idea?
I think that first thing is there's, parties at SEMA, whether it's in our industry or outside of our industry, are always a big thing. A lot of companies really rely on the after hours parties to interact with people and to get new people in. And this year was no exception. I think almost every company either has a party or they have a concerted effort to get people out to individualized dinners and things like that after hours. And this year was no exception there. I feel like that some companies, I definitely noticed a lot more companies utilizing geofenced ads at the show, i.e. when you were in the show and you were scrolling Facebook, you were getting a lot of SEMA specific ads. So they knew that you were inside the fence and they were serving you up ads. That was way more prevalent this year than I've ever seen in the past. So, and we actually ran some of those for some of our clients. So, but more so than just the ones that we ran, I saw geofence ads being placed for a lot of other companies as well. I feel like in general, the things that maybe stood out to me a little bit were companies that were really focusing on the companies I thought were having some success getting people into the booths and things like that were companies that were doing a lot of demos, like having action, having a lot of people in the booth, pulling people in to talk to them and things like that. So I feel like, and this is kind of a little bit of an offshoot, but at least in our industry, I think there's a desire again from people that are in the industry to have a genuine physical connection with somebody at a company. I think for a lot of years, the pendulum sort of swung back and people were like only concerned about price. And they were like, I don't really need a sales rep. I don't really need, help. I just want to get the product I want, and I want to get it as cheap as I can. I'm feeling like a lot of people, that pendulum is swinging back to where people really want to have that one-on-one connection with a sales rep, want to have that one-on-one connection with a company so that if they have an issue, they have a actual human being that they know on a personal level that they can reach out to. And I think the companies that are tapping into that are the ones that I tended to notice the largest crowds at their booth and people talking the most positively about. So that's kind of a change from a couple of years ago, because I think that, and I don't know if it's based on the pandemic or what, but I do feel like there's a swing back towards personalized service, working with a company that, and companies to answer your question about marketing, companies that were sort of really pushing that's kind of the direction they're going. I think that was a message that was being well received, not just in our industry, in a variety of other industries that I know individuals in as well. I think there's a movement back towards that more personalized service. So
no, that perfectly answered my question. It's funny. I just got off the phone with a buddy of mine who does marketing overseas. And that's been and it's funny because you're probably the third person in the last like 4 days to kind of mention how marketing is becoming so much more personalized, and it's finding ways that you can specifically help this customer. This specific customer, what are you needing help with? Let's figure out how I can help you. And that's what obviously we've talked about before with kind of the word of mouth type of deal. If you can bring that personalized experience to a customer or client, they're more likely going to talk to their friends and family about like, he understood me. He was actually trying to figure out what I was looking for and not just kind of giving generic, like, you should try this and this. But when you can be much more specific with a client and trying to figure out exactly what they need and try to figure it out. And obviously it might be a little bit trickier with if there's a lot of window tint companies, but if you're asking a mom, like, what are the reasons why you want to have this window film up, or trying to preserve your vehicle so you're getting paint protection film, like asking questions that are actually going to get more than just a yes or no answer, that you're going to actually figure out the reason why that they're trying to have, the reason why they're coming in, and figuring out like this specific product or this specific service is going to help. And I think that's key to bringing in and having that retention of having those people coming back.
Well, I think that whether it's B2B or B2C, I mean, I think it all is the same. I mean, you have nuanced things even when you're working with B2B. There's a lot of people like in our industry that are trying to move from doing specifically automotive more and more into flat glass. Well, a lot of times some of those jobs have a little bit of dating on them, things like that. So, there's a cash flow issue that sometimes comes up. So, having a supplier that's willing to sit down with you and understand where you're trying to go with your business and try to, manage their program such that it can facilitate you, versus a big company that's like, this is our program, there's no deviation, it is what it is. I think people are looking for a little bit of that individualized touch and to feel like they're being heard, and the company they're working with is trying to do what they can to help them. I think that's true of both B2B and B2C. I think we went all the way out to the extreme of, we don't even need tellers at store. We don't even need clerks at stores. Just give us the automatic checkout, give us the, so that we do it. And now I think you're seeing that it's like, now you go into some stores, and I don't want to call any out by name, but but you go in there and you're hard pressed to even find anybody that can help you with anything. And I know I've started to get to the point where I avoid those stores, because if it's like, if I need to ask somebody something, I don't want to go there and hound them, but it's like sometimes you just need to ask a basic question, and you literally cannot find anybody in the store, and there's not even anybody at the front to check you out. You got to check yourself out. So I feel like the pendulum is swinging a little bit back. So anything a company can do, and again, we're talking a lot about operations and sales and things like that with what we're talking about right now. But I think even on the marketing side, if you can pass that message along that you are there to help, like, walk somebody through the process, you're there to consult with them to make sure that they're making the right choice, whatever the case may be, I do feel like there's momentum back in that direction. And I think that if you can tie into that, it's probably going to be beneficial, especially in an age where people are finding it feels like everybody's pulling away from that, and you're sort of on your own in an Amazon world where it's like, hey, buyer beware. There's no help anywhere. Just,
Yeah, I think it's, and we'll wrap it up here, but I think a lot of times too, it's understanding, one, being efficient and using these AI features and stuff, I think is one thing, but it doesn't mean that you have to do everything that way. I think you still, like you said, have to have that human element of, you got to know how to talk to somebody and be able to be personable and understand what they're looking for, versus just like taking what they need and putting it into an AI server and like, all right, this is what you're going to get. It's you have to kind of diversify yourself in a way that's going to be able to understand both segments. There's definitely a need for the human intelligence side of it, what we used to call in the Army, versus the technical intelligence. So you got to take both of those and kind of put it into like a nice little bundle wrap and be able to help your customer out.
Well, and I mean, I know I spent a lot of time today getting back from SEMA on the phone with a lot of clients that wanted to talk. And, I do see, even within our own business, the clients we're working with, there's a desire to say, hey, I want to jump on it. We're going to have a call later this week that just got scheduled today, that want to jump on a call and just be like, hey, let's just talk about, let's talk about the holiday period. What are we going to do? Let's brainstorm a little bit, versus like, maybe a couple of years ago, people were like, you're the expert, just do your thing, like type of thing, which is good, because I actually would rather have people involved and make sure we're doing the right thing. So I feel like if I owned a business right now, I'd be thinking about things that I can do to really send the message to my customers that we're a little bit different. We care a little bit more. We want to understand your needs. We want to understand your expectations. And here's what we're going to try to do to fulfill those expectations and make sure you're totally satisfied, versus, I think there was a couple of years where business was so good. People, I don't even want to say intentionally, but people just got a little bit cocky that as long as they, were open, business was going to come in. And I think now people are pulling back a little bit, and people have some choices, and they're using their ability to take their money elsewhere to say, okay, if I don't get the warm fuzzy from somebody when I talk to them on the phone, I'll find somebody that I do feel that way about.
Yeah. Which kind of leads us into the next question, or the first question, however people want to frame it, is what is brand identity and why is it so important? And that kind of goes hand in hand with some of the stuff that we're talking about. If somebody understands and knows that you're someone who's going to answer the phone versus just send an email, and that's something that definitely from an old job, obviously that's not specific with brand identity, but a lot can be lost when you're just doing something through an email or text, whereas you can pick up the phone, hear somebody, know what they're meaning. And so that can go into part of your brand identity of being, I'm the one that's going to answer the phone and not just send you an email. But obviously there's a lot more that kind of goes into your identity, obviously. And one of the things, I don't know if we talked about this, but I kind of have this idea stuck in my head that if, let's say, Nike was to create a hotel, we would know what that hotel, we would kind of already have a sense of what that hotel would be, versus if Hilton decided to come out with a tennis shoe, I don't think anybody would really know what that would look like. So I'll let you kind of take it from here as far as what is brand identity to you.
I mean, I think that I think you kind of nailed it with the Nike thing, and the fact that if your company has a brand what does that brand say? Without you saying anything, what does that brand speak? Whether you want to talk about Nike, whether you want to talk about like Virgin Atlantic, like there's a thought that comes in your mind to what like a flight on Virgin is versus I'll say another airline, Spirit. What comes along with that? I mean, so even among airlines, it's like, if I say the word Spirit, you think, okay, no frills, it's uncomfortable, but I'm probably going to get it cheap. It's going to be cheap, but not much else. Like it's hopefully going to safely get me to where I want to go as cheap as I possibly can get there. Same could probably be said for Frontier. But then you start talking about some other airlines, like I said, like Virgin Atlantic or, Emirates, something like that. And the expectation is a much greater experience that goes along with getting you safely to where you're going to go. So again, and how do you know that? You know that a little bit from experience, but I think you also know that a little bit from the branding that those companies do. So I think that if I were to sum up like brand identity, it's like, if somebody were to think about your company, what would they say about your company without you, leading them with like what you'd want them to say about your company? Is your company, does it do great work, but you're not the cheapest person in town? Is it that, well, there might be some mistakes that might not be perfect, but it's super cheap. It's way cheaper than anybody else. Those are both brands. I mean, and I'm not even here to say one is better than the other. Sometimes somebody can make a really good living being the a least expensive guy, but Earl Scheib painted cars for a lot of years, and Earl Scheib paint jobs are known to not be good paint jobs, but they were cheap, and for a lot of people they were good enough. So I think there's a lane, but I think when we start talking about brand identity, I think what you can't do is you can't be I'm not trying to use a big word here, but you can't be ambiguous about what that brand identity is. You can't be the cheap guy one day and the most expensive guy the next or whatever. You have to pick a lane of what your company represents, and you have to stay in that lane. If somebody's paying extra money to your company because the brand you have is that you do really high quality work, then you need to have a program in place that if you have a job that slips through that's not the highest quality work, that you take care of that for somebody. There's an expectation that comes along with the branding you've created. So I think it's important because, especially today, to answer the second part of that question, because people have expectations when they reach out to a brand. So even the way your website appears, everything is part of your brand. Your logo, the way your building looks, everything is part of your brand. And why it's important is where customers tend to get upset is when there's a disconnect between what your brand is and what you delivered. If your brand is, we're the least expensive place in town, and there's not, when you have a bad play experience on Spirit, you don't tend to get as upset about it because you sort of knew what you were getting into when you flew Spirit in the first place. If you pay the money and you get on an Emirates plane and you have a bad experience, you're probably going to not be thrilled about that. And you may even write an email to Emirates letting them know that you're unhappy about it. So where there's a problem and why branding is important is when there's a disconnect between what you're delivering and what your branding says you're going to deliver.
Yeah, I'm seeing no, that I think that makes sense. I'm sorry, I'm being distracted because I'm trying to bring up, like I said, the guy that I was talking to, we've had an ongoing conversation, and brand identity was definitely a conversation we had a while ago. And he definitely helped guide me as far as trying to figure out what I was doing and trying to understand it. I wouldn't say for us it's harder, but like for a marketing company, trying to understand like what your brand identity is a little bit trickier than say if you have a specific product and or like a line of products. And so it was kind of a dilemma for me to try to figure out exactly what am I doing or how am I portraying myself. And so he sent me this link about archetypes, and there's, I think, 12 different archetypes as far as being a business owner. And it's understanding what fits your personality best as far as what you're putting out on social media or how you're trying to portray yourself. And so I'm going to put the link up in the comments here, and it's something to think about when you're going through, because it gives different ideas of understanding like how Disney has a specific archetype versus Nike versus Chanel or whatever other major name brands that you kind of know. They all kind of have a specific idea, and whether it's the colors they're bringing in, the phrasing in their ads, or just the pictures or stuff that they're portraying. I think, like we mentioned before, whether it's Emirates or Virgin, I think you're thinking of a high class, like you said before. If it's something where you get a bad experience on something that you're expecting to be almost first class seats throughout the entire plane, and if you don't have that experience, you're kind of like, well, that wasn't what I assumed that this brand was going to give me. And so you can kind of have that understanding of figuring out like exactly what, if it's something that you're searching through and trying to figure out exactly what your brand identity is, this might be the one of the first few stepping stones, is trying to figure out like, okay, I can understand that I'm kind of this and this might be the direction that I want to go to. Obviously everybody's different, so we all kind of have different personalities, and this kind of gives like how every business has a different personality as far as what you're projecting.
And I think you got to make sure that what you're projecting is in line with your brand. We talk a lot, like, we work with a lot of people that are in the automotive segment of the business, and a lot of them, the vast majority of the business they do is on Ford F-150 pickup trucks, Honda Accords, Subaru Outbacks, yada, yada, yada. But they build a website and their social media is only filled with when they're the exotic cars that are coming in. The issue with that is not that you shouldn't sprinkle that in to show that you do high quality work. The issue with that is the person with the Ford F-150 might get the idea that your brand is that you service high-end, exotic, sports cars, things like that. So they may actually look somewhere else because they feel like you're not a good fit. The brand you're sending out is that you do work on these type of cars, when the reality is you want to do the work on, all types of cars. So you really have to, even on social media, you have to make sure that your posts are in line with your brand. I mean, I don't want you to feel too tied up and too handcuffed to be like, oh, you overthink every post, but you really do have to think that every little piece of content that you put out becomes part of your brand. It's especially when, I'm not trying to tell anybody what to do, but in times where people get very offended about different things, from a marketing perspective, I would say you're probably better off to steer clear of things that could be potentially a charged issue. And you could be like, well, it's my business, I'm going to post whatever I want, but just understand that post becomes part of your brand. For good or for bad, it becomes part of your brand.
I think that goes back to a conversation we've had before of separating your personal and your business brand. If it's something that personally affects you and that you want to vent about, maybe do it on your personal page versus your business page. And that, obviously, if it's something where you just want to be transparent and this is what you want to do on your business brand, then that's fine too. Because if that's the route that you want to go. But if it's one of those, like I said, and I always bring up this, it's like I was doing Formula One and different stuff that didn't make sense on my business brand. It's like, if somebody's looking for marketing stuff, they're not going to want to or care. They might care, but it's not relevant to have F1 stuff being posted on my business page. So if
you really want to post that because you really like F1 and you're a marketing agency like we are, it might be pulling something out. Like, I'm a huge F1 fan and I noticed that, Red Bull's doing this really cool marketing thing that I wanted to talk about. And that way you're sort of saying to people, at a personal level, I really enjoy F1 racing, but I'm bringing it back to the brand and saying, hey, this is what I thought was really cool about what Red Bull's been doing lately or something like that. That way you can weave in some personalized things, I think. But you don't want to.
Should have asked you about this a year ago then, because I could have tied it all up and I could still be doing F1 stuff on there.
So. No, I mean, I think that because I don't think we're robot. I don't think as a business owner you want to be a robot and never show any of your personality. But I think, if you're postings, if you're a small business in a local community and you post something about which candidate you're supporting for the school board, the school board elections, to some people, that's going to speak about, that maybe more so than you even anticipated, might speak a little bit about, I mean, we have a gas station in the town that I live in, and they had and I'm not even going to go into what, but they had a particular sticker that was kind of politically charged in their little like carousel stickers that they sell in the gas station. And it erupted into a whole thing on the town Facebook group about how people weren't going to get gas at that gas station anymore because this gas station was selling sticker that was extremely politically charged. And I thought, I think as a business owner, you don't want to go there. It's okay to be a little bit transparent, but you don't want to alienate a certain degree of people just because, so you just got to be cautious.
Yeah, no, I think that kind of goes with what I was thinking into the next question, as far as you could do that stuff if you are in a small community and can kind of have a conversation. It's a conversation starter with people versus just like, hey, I do marketing. It's like, hey, these are kind of things I'm noticing. Is this something you're into as well? And then it kind of turns into that, which obviously, like I mentioned, it kind of goes in the question is how can we engage our local community with our marketing efforts? So kind of to the opposite of what you were saying too, if it's something that's going to bring in positive comments or questions from different people, like obviously if we post this in groups, I post this in like my local, like you said, I posted in my Streamwood, Illinois page. And I think it's one of those, you can kind of create the conversation. And I know you do like a community business leader meeting, and it's one of like you can kind of discuss stuff that's going on in your community as far as how can I, especially if it comes up like how do I do this kind of marketing effort, or I'm not sure about email campaigns. If you're already kind of within the local group setting, whether it's a Facebook page or you kind of have like whether it be a big text stream type of deal, you can kind of engage those things and you're not just directly spamming them with your own marketing or your own company.
I think, when it comes to a local community, I think you really can't fake it. I mean, you have to kind of show up. I mean, for lack of a better term, you have to show up. I think, I don't know that I would recommend somebody just like saying, oh, I'm going to buy a logo on a banner at the football stadium or whatever. People want you to actually show up and do something like, so I think that people could spend a lot of money just throwing money at something, but not really showing up. And that won't do anywhere near as much as, you potentially holding an event at your place and saying, hey, we're going to give we're going to do some sort of contest or whatever to help raise money for the local Boy Scouts chapter. And we do a lot of window tinting companies. We're going to give away we're going to do a drawing and somebody's going to get a free window tint for helping out the local Boy Scouts with a donation or buying a box of Girl Scout cookies. Everybody gets entered and somebody that bought a box of Girl Scout cookies is going to get a free tint job. That's actually tangible and you're actually showing up, actually having, a logo on a banner at the football stadium. I'm not sure anybody looks at that and says, hey, I'm going to call that company for marketing. I'll give you an example out of our own, portfolio of things that we did in our local community here where we're based. We built at no cost the parent teacher organization, the PTO's website for them. There's a lot of people in the community that are involved in the PTO, and we build websites and we do things like that. And a lot of people in the community became exposed to the fact that we built websites. We built a really nice one for the PTO. So a lot of people got exposed because they're on there using the PTO website to find out when the events are and things like that. So without us saying a word or pounding our own chest, it got around town pretty quickly that we build really nice websites because we built the PTO website for them. So I think you've got to be a little bit innovative in how you engage with your local community. What I would say though is figure out a way to show up. Don't just put money out to say, hey, I want to have my logo on, the the local calendar or something like that. I just don't think those things work. I think people just overlook it. But if you show up and help the athletic department at the local high school run an event to help raise money, the parents whose kids are involved in those athletics are going to remember that.
It's funny. I got an email today from the local golf course to put my logo on like the cards that you fill out while you're obviously I'm not an avid golfer to remember like what that card is specifically called, and it was quite a big price. And I'm thinking whether I'm the only logo on there, if I'm going to pay $1,000 to be put on, I guess every card that's going to go out might be something, if I feel that that's worth it. Because one, if you're thinking, and to me, as I'm talking through it, it might not be a terrible idea if there's business owners that are going golfing and they're going to see your name listed. But while you were mentioning it, one of the things I kept thinking of was if you're going to these different shows, like if you've gone to SEMA, if you've gone to the Window Film Conference and you're like, ooh, I liked what they did over here, this demo here, you could do something similar to that at a local expo. And I know I probably have used this before, like a craft fair, an expo, set up a tent, do a demo. Like you don't actually have to have a car there, but if you have a certain, like a piece of window that you could demo how to install, or you're just showing the PPF. I know I know a lot of the guys in the shop have kind of that water dripper thing to show kind of how the water beads off of paint protection film. Yeah. You can have those things set up to kind of get in front of people, and then they have a conversation, and they might not know that they need some of these products, but if they're going to talk to you, who would be a product expert, and you can kind of explain it, and that gives you the face time. And it kind of goes back to what we mentioned before when you were on last time, is if you're going to be this big character, or if you're going to kind of do all this stuff, they're going to see you. And if that's your character and who you are when you're there at these shows, and then they're going to see that same person at the shop, you're going to kind of be that you're going to stick in your head and going to be remembered like, oh, this is a guy that kind of explained this. And he had a crazy red suit on or something and he had the same thing on when he came to the shop, or had a bow tie on, whatever your thing is. Or if you're he was a regular guy, was super nice and kind of explained everything to us. And then he was the same guy when we came to the shop. I think, and that leads obviously full circle with the brand identity of who you are when you're out at these different events, whether it's, you want to be the same person when you're at an event, when you're on social media, and when you're in your shop, because you're consistent. People are like, okay, he's not doing different stuff. Or depending on, obviously, if you have different people kind of showing up at different things, then that's fine too. But your brand, your identity is kind of one of those things you want to make sure that if you're going to be that same person to be out in public and to get into people's faces, that they're going to remember you.
No, I think that's critical. And number two, like I said, there's ways that you can, like you said, being involved in like different, craft fairs or whatever. But, if you're in the automotive segment of the business, my guess is right around where your shop is, there's monthly get-togethers of different car guys, whether it's the Corvette Club, the Porsche Club, whatever. And a lot of times they're looking for content to have at their local meetings. So, a lot of times they'll have like a local garage will invite the club over to talk to them about things to look for in a pre-purchase inspection on a car. There's no reason why you couldn't invite the car to come to your shop and talk to them about things to look for in a quality window tint job. Don't be overly salesy. Don't be trying to close people on the spot, but just become that person that's recognized as the local expert in window tinting. And what's going to happen is, and I'm really going off on a tangent. I may cut us short on the next question, but I've often thought about like every different area of expertise is like a triangle, and the person that's like the car person that's really into cars, underneath that person, there tends to be a triangle of people that in their sphere of influence or group of friends or however you want to talk about it, they're the car person. They're the person people ask, hey, where do you take your car to get it fixed, or this or that or whatever. There's also probably somebody or a couple people that are in like, they're really good cooks, or they're really good at baking things, or their yard always looks amazing. They're really good at landscaping. Somebody fits those blocks in every one of your friend groups out there. So the people you're reaching when you have like a lunch and learn or a get together where you talk to people at your shop that are part of the Corvette Club about window tinting, you're not just reaching the 20 people that are at that event. You're reaching everybody that's in their triangle and their pyramid, because if they start using you for window tint and somebody comes up and said, hey, I've been thinking about getting my car tinted, where should I go? They're probably going to say you, because now they have a personal interaction with you. So I think people get too caught up with, well, how many jobs am I going to sell if I have that event at my shop? That's like being really short thinking about it. And the idea is to be like you said, how do we engage our local community? And I the first thing I said was, you got to show up. Yeah, these things take a little bit of time. You're probably gonna have to buy some beverages, maybe have some cold drinks for people, maybe some snacks. But if you show up, it will have a long-term benefit to you. And I think that's going to be a whole heck of a lot better than having your logo on the back of a golf scorecard. I'm sorry. I just,
No, I think it's funny because everything you said, I think we were, like we said, the client that we are going to have the phone call with, you mentioned the same thing, because they're kind of a part of another automotive type of sector. And if he was to set up his own type of display or show, but it all goes back to, is he going to bring value to whoever is going to be there and see it? And like you said, that sphere of influence or triangle, whatever it might be, is that person is going to remember you, because one, and I think you mentioned it to them, it's don't be just selling yourself and trying to pitch. If you can give value, that's going to be more memorable, and someone's going to be like, oh yes, I can use this piece of valuable information in the future, even if it doesn't mean I'm going to go to this guy for this specific thing. If they're giving you, hey, why don't you use this microfiber cloth with this kind of spray on solution is what I use in it, and let me show you how it works. Then this person will be like, oh, okay, this guy kind of explained this to me, and yet he was just showing me how to do this, but he also does A, B, C, and D. I might have to go back to him. And like you said, if they're the person that kind of people go to, it's the word of mouth marketing that we've kind of banged the drum on a lot. Tier 2 is you're expanding your own kind of following, because people are gonna be like, oh, I remember this guy
you become the thought leader. You become the thought leader in the space, and they think of you as the person that they should turn to for something like that. And I think, again, it takes work. I mean, everybody, like, I'd love to tell you, hey, put your logo on the back of a golf scorecard and it's going to pay huge dividends. My guess is most of that money is wasted. I golf. I never look at the back of the score. I couldn't tell you a single company that was listed on the back of the scorecard at the club, at the golf courses I play regularly. Not a single one. Oh, the only thing I can think of is on one of the tee boxes, a local realtor bought a sign to hang on the tee box, and everybody routinely draws stuff on the lady's face. So I don't know that that's the image she's trying to portray, but I do remember that only because people on the regular deface the picture. But I mean, I just think you have, again, I'm repeating myself, but if you want to engage, it's going to require you showing up. And it's not going to be something like buying a logo on the back of a golf scorecard or something like that. I think you got to put some skin in the game, more than just dollars.
Well, we're over, but we're going to wrap up with one of my terms to know, and hopefully it's fairly short. I think I sent you two. We're going to pick the one that I think is a little more easy to explain. But what is pay per click? Whether it's pay per click marketing or kind of, I've definitely have seen it all over the place. I'm sure other people have too. But what exactly is pay per click?
I mean, the best way to describe it, typically when people use that, they're talking about Google AdWords, and they're talking about spending money to have their website or their ad show up when people are searching on search engines, and you pay money every time somebody clicks on one of those. So hence the term pay per click. Obviously, that also exists with Bing and Yahoo, but Google's the big one there. And there are ways you can run social media ads that are also you pay when people click on them. But typically when somebody refers to pay per click, they're predominantly talking about search engine marketing, i.e. Google AdWords, and you paying money for every time somebody clicks on your ad.
Yeah, and when you're doing Google Ads, obviously you've mentioned this before of having the budget. So depending on if you're paying more, you're more likely to get more clicks versus if you're paying like the minimum amount, depending on how well you've done your keywords and negative keywords and all that to make sure that you're driving people to or grabbing those keywords. Obviously, if you're putting $1,000 a month towards doing Google AdWords, chances are you're going to have more clicks, but obviously you're paying more. So it's finding out what that average is versus like if it ends up being you're paying $3 per click. And I think the analytics does show you that within Google too.
Yeah.
Like you're paying $30 a month, but it's actually coming down to like 5 cents per click because you're getting a whole bunch of clicks.
I mean, there's two different things to look at. There's the daily budget that you're going to set, and there's also the maximum cost per click typically that you're going to set. So if there's a lot of competition in your local market, and let's just assume for the sake of argument that your ads are set up exactly like your competitors' ads. Your keywords are the same, your ads are the same, everything is exactly the same, but they have the same budget as you, but their maximum cost per click is $1 more than yours. They're going to basically show up higher than you and potentially get more clicks than you because they're higher. Also, you have to look at, where your maximum cost per click is based on your budget. You may get a lot of clicks if your cost per click, your maximum cost per click is high, but if your daily budget is low, you may find that by 1 o'clock in the afternoon, you've run out of budget for the day, and now your ads aren't going to show the rest of the day. So there's this balancing act of having the appropriate daily budget and then knowing that, okay, if I don't have a massive daily budget, I might not try to beat everybody out for maximum cost per click. I might be okay to show up in the number 2 or number 3 position because I want my budget to last longer. Where if I really set it up to where I want to show up in the number 1 position, that might be okay. But if you have a small budget, that might mean by lunchtime, your ads are done for the day. So you've really got to play around with those two things to figure out where you get the happy medium, how many clicks you're getting and if they're quality and things like that. And, once you get that working really well, you could tend to add more money to it and get more clicks if you want to. But you can also, when you watch the metrics, start to see where even if you add more money to it, there's only a certain number of clicks that are going to happen in a given community on a given day, no matter how much money you put in, So you've got to really pay attention to doing AdWords to make sure you're doing them right, or you can waste a lot of money on AdWords and not get good results. So, make sure you spend the time to know what you're doing because it could really drain a lot of money and not produce results if it's not set up or not monitored properly.
No, that's a great answer. I think that's going to wrap it up. I was going to mention too, I have 3 videos I'm going to post in the comments that are going to retain to like brand identity and brand strategy to kind of go along with what we were talking about earlier. The only thing is I hope you guys can handle his accent, but he's got really good information. I just really wanted to share that with people. On top of the YouTube stuff, make sure to check out our YouTube page. Actually, it's Patric's YouTube page. We're in the process of trying to figure out how to switch that over to just iMagnet. But we've got all of the full episodes. I'm continuing to put up the smaller ones. So if you just wanted to find a specific topic, if I can talk, if you're looking for a specific topic that you want to dive into, then you don't have to watch the full episodes. But I hope that everybody kind of checks that out and leave comments and leave questions, and we can try to answer them in future episodes.
Sounds great. Hey, thanks everybody for tuning in. It's great to be back. For everybody that I saw out at SEMA, it was great seeing you. Always appreciate the face-to-face interaction with everybody. So thanks for coming up and saying hi, spending some time. It was a good time. So thanks everybody.
All right. We'll see you next time.
All right.